everyone, and welcome back to another podcast by a bunch of college kids who just happen to be Orthodox Christian. Today, we're going to be talking about how the Arab culture views women. And we know this is going to be a controversial topic, but we're going to do our best to talk about it in the way that we feel as is the most appropriate for everyone.
Rita, and we have our special guest today, Bella. How do you guys feel about limitations? Do you guys ever feel like you had some limitations, as Arab woman?
I definitely feel as if I've had a lot of limitations in my life. I wouldn't say like I wasn't allowed to do a lot of things, but because I am a girl, I have to hold a certain standard, if that makes sense. And, I can't like run around and do a bunch of crazy things because, girls don't do that. And we have to hold ourselves to a certain standard. But I feel like as like time has gone on, things have changed a little bit and we become more modernized. If that makes sense, girls are like, I wouldn't say allowed, but can do more than I feel like they used to.
I feel that I definitely did. I wouldn't necessarily use the word limitations because it hasn't necessarily stopped me from living my life personally, but it's always, like Rita said, because I'm a girl in the Arab community, you have to be careful about what you do, about who you associate with. And the comment that usually comes with that is like, oh, nobody's going to marry you if they see you out past 12 o'clock, or nobody's going to marry you if it is. And that's always kind of what it comes back to is so that has been something that's been told to a lot of young women in this community, and it does kind of limit about what we're allowed to do.
Both of you are not first gen or second gen. So how do you see differences between the way your moms grew up, because they were raised by immigrants, I think, as opposed to being raised by a first generation American Arab woman? Like, how do you see that difference of culture and household life between what your mom has said versus how you experience it? If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. I feel like me and my mom are very similar when it comes to that because she held me to the same standards that she did growing up, but I feel like I got to do a little bit more than she did. I got to play on travel teams for soccer and just be able to like hang out with my friends more while she had to go work and do a bunch of stuff. But yeah, I feel like in a sense she raised me in a way so I could have those same old fashioned standards, if that's even the right word, but be able to be myself in those standards.
Yeah, I think that my mother definitely raised me with the cultural values without a doubt, but she did also kind of understand the environment and the kind of society of America more than maybe my grandparents did. So I feel like my grandparents raised their kids as if they were back home, but my mom raised me with the values from back home, but with kind of acknowledging the society here. So I definitely feel like I was given more freedom, um, just in the sense of where I go to school or how often I travel or who I hang out with. Um, so yeah, I definitely feel like there is that difference where they're just maybe more understanding about the social aspects of living like in America.
I definitely agree on that too.
Is there anything that you guys want to say, especially for the people watching, that maybe it's like subtle things people do that kind of bothers you or that you kind of notice, and it's like, you know what I'm trying to say?
Sometimes I get like a little bit annoyed when I see like my brothers are allowed to do something that like I wasn't allowed to do at their age. And and it's not, I don't know if it's because I am a girl, but sometimes it feels that way, but it might just be because I'm the oldest and my parents didn't have that experience with me in that sense, and they know that like some things are like okay when it comes to my younger siblings because I went through it and they helped me through it in that sense. But yeah, that's something that like kind of bothers me sometimes.
One thing that kind of bothers me is how everything is always pointed back to marriage and having kids. And granted, I really want to get married and I really, really want to have kids, but I also want to be a doctor and I also play various instruments. And there's so many other aspects to me other than just who I'm going to marry and how many children I'm going to have and how quickly I'm going to do all of that. Um, so that does kind of usually dominate conversations, which I can find frustrating because there's usually just that one thing that they're always asking, oh, are you seeing anyone? When are you planning on getting married? Oh, if you're going to be a doctor, then you're not going to get married and have kids till you're old. Aren't you? Just that whole conversation. Um, and I do kind of find it frustrating because then the person I'm talking to, I feel that they don't care enough to get to know me as a person. They only care about who my potential husband is or my future children, but not necessarily me.
Yeah, I feel as if there's like, I wouldn't say like a stereotype, but like something like that against women where like Bella wants to be a doctor, but like if like another man like wanted to be a doctor, he'd be in school for like 12ish years. Like why doesn't it matter for how long in school he is, but it matters for like a girl? It just doesn't make that much sense.
Where have you seen challenges or pressures by, let's say, whether in high school or college? I know we all have, everyone has seen challenges and from other girls your age, maybe peer pressuring or you do things you may not necessarily want to do because of your upbringing. And how have you been able to, let's say, stay true to your roots and values and stuff throughout these years?
I think one way I've been able to do that in college, will like stay close to my roots, is that I am in an Arab sorority and I am with a bunch of girls who were all from this like basically the same upbringing as me. So being in that environment and not necessarily being in the environment of all these like, I wouldn't say like white girls, but like white girls where they're just like going to parties and they're like doing all this stuff when I could just like hang out with all my Arab friends and it's just be chill and there would be no pressure to do anything or, go out or anything like that. We could just sit, hang out, talk about our families, like talk about our foods, and it doesn't feel like not normal. But that's not the word. I don't know what the word is, but something like that. And it just feels comfortable.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I feel like there's definitely a lot of differences between, I'm gonna say like more cultured and like Arab girls and other girls because like one thing is kind of family connections because I'll tell my friends, oh sorry, my family and I are doing this, and they just don't understand that I want to spend time with my family and that I enjoy it. And that's definitely been something that's kind of ostracized me from others because they'll sit here and just complain about their family the entire time. And then they turn to me as if it's my turn to complain about my family. But I love my family and I enjoy spending time with them. So that's kind of something that's made a difference. Then I totally agree with Rita too, just about like they always go out and go to parties and do whatever and then look at you differently if you don't want to do what they're doing or you don't feel comfortable in a certain situation, so you don't go to it. And they just don't understand that for an abundance of reasons. So I think definitely just spending time with people who have had similar upbringings, who have similar morals, similar cultures, that really does help kind of ground you.
Have those feelings ever kind of made you guys drift away from the culture, or feel like you kind of needed to, just for that space, for that, to really gather, your thoughts and yourself and really find out who you are? Did it ever make you guys want to drift from the culture, or did it kind of not really affect that?
I feel like when I was in high school, it did, just because um, I wanted to be accepted by all the people that I grew up with. And I wanted to like go out and hang out with all of my friends. But at the same time, like I loved hanging out with my cousins like basically every single day and every single weekend. And, there was a time when I felt like, like, what if I didn't have to do that? What if I just hung out with all of my school friends? And I kind of did that for a while just to see like what would happen. And, as much as it was fun, it wasn't the same. And I wasn't my full and true potential that I really was with my family, when rather than when I'm with my friends from school. So it's just like a difference. And I wouldn't say I was like being two-faced or anything, but when I'm with my like white friends, I act differently because they act different, and I try to be a part of that group. But like when I'm with like all of my Arab friends and all of my cousins, I can really be myself and not really care.
Yeah, I completely agree. For me personally, my parents have always really, really rationalized things with me. So they would give me a rule, give me a boundary, and then fill it in with an explanation. So I never really felt pressured to do things differently with my like white friends, because I would always be able to understand why I'm not doing it. So I never really felt the pressure to. But I completely agree. I do feel um, kind of like my true self, the full version of myself when I'm around my family, around my cousins, because they are people who have had similar, like they just have similar upbringing, similar humor, similar morals, and you could just be completely comfortable with them and completely trust them in a way that I feel you might not be able to with your like American or white friends.
Would you say there's a difference of, I guess, upbringing and values and whatnot between you and similar young Orthodox women who are not Arab culture, or also young Arab women who are not Orthodox? Like, what would you say is more so, like, would you say that your upbringing was more so intertwined, the Arabic culture and the Orthodox culture, or what?
Well, I feel like mine is definitely like way more Orthodox and way more Arab than a lot of people, just because my dad is Father John. But yeah, I mean I grew up in the church. I was there basically every single day of my life for a really long time. And that kind of made me into the person I am, because I truly understood the values of church and why we do everything. And I feel like a lot of other like Arabs who didn't have that don't have that connection. Well, they might, but not the same way that I was in it when I was a kid. I was like 6 years old, like running around church, like doing my thing. I was praying, I was crossing myself. I thought I was a badass. But yeah, I mean it's different for a lot of reasons, but everybody's raised in different ways. But I feel like we all were raised with the central idea that we're Arab in that sense.
Yeah, I definitely do feel that it really, really depends on the family and the parenting style, whether Arab or not, Orthodox or not. I do feel that I've had a definitely like maybe more Orthodox upbringing than some Arab families, but I've also had a significantly more Arab upbringing than, for example, like my white friends. Um, but yeah, it really, really depends kind of on the parenting styles, on the priorities, on what generation, like if your parents are first, second, third generation, because that really does play into it as well.
I like that you guys brought up the church. It just reminds me how, at the end of the day, the one place I know for sure in our hearts we know where everyone is the same is the chalice, is the blood and body of Christ. That all people, rich, poor, man, woman, everyone communes from it. And it's the one place where everyone is the same, no matter status, quote unquote, or where you're at on your spiritual journey or where you're at. That's for everyone. It's the ultimate place, and for now 2021 years has never been conquered and has went through so much and is still here and still is one place where everyone can find equality, anywhere in the world. I just want to throw that in there. But I guess another question to kind of, or not really a question, more, so, there's a lot of people watching. If you guys, had something to whoever, but just to people as, a woman in the Arab culture, what would you want it to be? Whether it's another other woman, whether it's to the men, whether it's to everyone in general, or to parents, or to, I don't know, maybe a tip to your future self. What just something you guys want to say? Put like a word out there.
I feel like if I heard this when I was younger, I would have taken it to heart like a lot. But stay true to yourself and do what you need to do in order to be successful while staying in the values that brought you up. Because if you steer out of that way, you'll just fall down and you're not going to know why. But when you go back to your values and how you grew up and stay on that path of growth and where you want to go in life, you'll find success. And I've discovered that recently, but I wish I heard that a long time ago, and I hope that helps somebody else.
So beautiful. I completely agree. Yeah, I think just being unapologetically yourself, because there are always going to be people who don't agree with what you're doing. And if you're trying to please everyone, well, for starters, you're never going to. And then that way, you're also just not going to end up pleasing yourself or pleasing God. So I completely agree. Just be unapologetically yourself. I think especially respect yourself for yourself, not because someone else is telling you to, not because you feel guilty or anything, but you should find respect for yourself on a really deep level, because then that way you'll be able to be your true self without kind of feeling guilty or being self-conscious about it. And another thing I would say probably is listen to like the advice that your parents say, because it's definitely something that I definitely as a kid would just roll my eyes about whenever, mom turns one little mistake into a big lecture. But those lectures hit hard the older you get. So I definitely just like listen to those and take them to heart, because there's really deep meaning behind them all.
Going off that topic, like it's kind of sparked an idea in my head. How would you, as a future mother, like raise your future daughters or kids in general, like with these same values, but also giving them the freedoms that you may or may not have had? And like, what would be your approach? That'd be kind of a very broad question, but your thoughts.
I feel like I turned out pretty good, so I would probably raise my kids the same way I was raised, because I'm pretty cool. But yeah, just keeping those church values, making sure my kids know who God is and how amazing he is, but also knowing who they are and where they're from. Palestine. But yeah, just making sure they stay true to themselves in the sense that if they need anything, they know that they can turn to God, if anything.
Yeah, I completely agree. I love how I turned out. I love how you turned out too, Rita. But I agree. I think that just raising your children with the beauty of our culture, I think that is so important. There is so much richness and beauty and hospitality and powerful love in our culture. So I definitely would want to raise my children implementing that. And of course, in the church, just with the just with the kind of rules and guidelines and advice from the church. But definitely with just kind of love at the main point of all their decisions and all the guidelines I put towards them.
So looking back as well, is there anything that at the time kind of seemed like, oh, why is it like this? Or it's just because I'm a woman? And then looking now, it's kind of like, it turned out like, oh, it kind of makes sense, or is everything, or is it still kind of like, no, that was still wrong. That was still for this. Or is it looking back to, as you know, as you got older, did your view on things kind of change to what was right, what was wrong, how you were treated, or was it always kind of like, no, it really was just not okay? Or is there a gray area?
Well, I feel like when I was younger, my parents used to be way more strict on me than they are now. And I always never understood it until I got older and I realized that they were trying to protect me from certain things. But at some points, it did feel like, oh, it's because I'm a girl, because like my brother gets to do this. But it's okay. Because at the end of the day, I'm glad that like those experiences and those things that my parents tried to keep me from, I didn't have to do. So I didn't have to experience those things. And I heard this in like, I think it was in a movie one time, but somebody said not all experiences are good experiences. So you don't need to be a part of everything as much as you really want to. It's fun too. Trust me, it's really fun to be a part of a lot of things, but sometimes it's just not worth it.
I agree. I feel like there's, of course, just even as a kid, there's a lot of things that you don't understand. There's only a certain amount of information you could be given. So just in that sense, there's definitely things that as I got older, I understood, and I'm grateful for my parents putting that, kind of like I'm grateful for my parents putting those rules or guidelines on me, even though I wasn't so psyched about them when I was a kid. But now looking back, I'm able to understand and appreciate why they did it, and the reasons for it. The only thing I guess that I kind of look back on and I'm still don't understand why is just again that marriage conversation, just put on a really young kid. I don't understand why everything has to come back to marriage for a literal child, because it just gets in their head, and it's probably not good for children to be hearing that constantly. My parents didn't do that to me, or didn't make that a main focus for me ever, but just kind of from outward sources, definitely.
Obviously, we could keep going and going about this, but I do think if you guys have any questions for us too, that maybe there's certain things we can't get asking questions to you guys. Maybe you guys have questions for us. I think it's only fair if we
Or
let
any
that.
what's the word I was going to say? Advice that you would recommend towards other Arab guys or Orthodox guys or anyone. Just questions, advice, anything.
Some advice I have for like any like Orthodox or Arab guys is that you should learn how to respect some women, because I see a lot of situations where I feel like girls don't get the respect that they should be given. And that's not fair when the same respect is given back to the guy. Why isn't it given back to the girl? So I feel like giving women and girls the respect that they deserve is something that a lot of Arab and Orthodox guys need to start doing.
I completely agree. I feel that respecting women is so, so important, that the men should treat us as equals, because we are, and should treat us how they would want to be treated. It's not okay to think of women as less just because they're women. So I completely agree that treating us with the respect we deserve is so important. I also think just getting to know women on a personal level before you try to get to know them kind of on a romantic level or with any intentions or whatever, because then you're getting to know us as people with no hidden agenda or whatever. I think that's super, super important.
I also just want to add on that just sparked in my head that when these Arab guys are like looking for wives, like, do you want your wife to know you as somebody who disrespects other women? Like, would you want to have that with you? Like, how bad would that look if you're trying to like talk to this girl and she just knows you as somebody who just absolutely degrades women? It doesn't look good, you know? So it's always good to have that respect with you.
Questions for us since the floor is open. It's getting intense now. But any questions for us? Anything?
Yeah, I have a question. How do you guys think that women are treated in our community from your perspective?
It varies case by case. I feel like most of the Arab women I know, or like that I'm very, very close with personally, are also coincidentally raised in the church. So I feel like they're on a similar mindset as kind of like what we were talking about. Whereas I guess looking outwards, people I don't really know too well from like what I've heard is just that some people are just like have very um just people have grown up in these very strict and conservative old-fashioned Arab households that didn't really grow up in the church really, but ended up trying to be a rebel and go out and do stuff on their own. And I feel like doing everything like being raised in the church as an Arab values as a consistent basis is like it's a very balanced lifestyle, but generally most of the people that I know I'd say are in like good mindset like we discussed earlier.
Yeah. So to add on to that, I mean, before I go, I should say, I'm the oldest of two younger brothers. You know, I I I have my mom, my dad, and then our grandma also lives with us. So I kind of get that's kind of this perspective I'm coming at. And no, I think that there definitely are times, and I see it, and you can't always bring it up, but there's times when you notice it's the treatment is different. We don't have to shy away from that. We don't have to act like it doesn't exist. Let's be real about it. Let's talk about it if we really want to improve together. And I think, especially within, I could speak on our culture. I think a lot of it kind of stems from a fear, and sometimes it's done with good intention, sometimes it's not. But I think even when it is done with good intention, it stems from a fear, especially, with everyone coming to this country, especially within, America, where we live. What I can speak on is, I mean, I was born here all my life. I grew up here, but I know, or at least what I've observed is I think a lot of it stems from our fear, especially a lot of parents coming in as immigrants, and that they felt the need, especially with their daughters, to place precautions, place protections. I mean, some things were carried culturally over, but I think that fear and that stem of the seeds of those fears kind of grew, and it allowed more sheltering of the woman. It allowed more what they thought was protection. But in reality, a lot of it came out to kind of preventions, if that's the right word, to or yeah, preventions. It prevented maybe not necessarily your generation, but I know there are girls same ages as you that go through a lot. I have people talk to me about certain things sometimes, and it opens my eyes. And there's some things you assume, but when it's someone and they tell you about it, it's more personal, and you kind of really get to see it, and you kind of notice things here and there. And it's sad because, I mean, a lot of people I know, a lot of them are outside the church, but even people I know that are within the church, it's sad because, you know, I don't want to judge, but there is a lot of hypocrisy. And I think we forget our origins. We forget what we should live as. Our guide as is Christ. And people forget that. And a lot of it, fear doesn't come from God. So when we do things out of fear, we can really hurt other people. And I see that a lot with the women, is that because of the fear, especially, the mothers, but especially with the men. And it's things I genuinely think about one day when I have kids, how should I upbring them? Of course, I want my daughter and my son to be equal. But sometimes there's hard situations you think about, and I don't want to get into specifics, but you think about certain situations and it's, you think you're doing it out of a protection, but then you really have to ask yourself, are you, or are you really causing a hurt that you're not seeing? Are you really causing a pain? Are you really, because of my own fears, because of my own will, and not, I'm doing something out of my own will or out of my own pride or ego or out of my own fear? Is that causing me to limit someone else, and God forbid it be one of my kids or someone I know? So these are concerns that come up, and you can go on and on about these, but I do see it, and it's a legitimate discussion to have, because it's sad. There are things I hear, and the treatment of women in our community, in our culture, and there's pain behind the scenes that people never see, and it's not fair. It's not right, and I do think that there needs to be change, and that starts with us, with the youth. And we need to. I'm gonna end it with this. I think we need to find a balance. We need to find a balance with protecting each other, men and women, all of us protecting each other, but not out of fear. Having it truly be protection with love. Have it truly be a protection that doesn't limit one another. Protection starts within all of us. It's understanding your values, understanding your morals. And at the end of the day, what it comes to trust. And how do we develop that? I think if we all look to Christ, if we all look within the church as a place to find the truth, as a place to find what love means, as a place to find a connection of how should we raise each other, how should we watch over each other. And if it's in the church, I don't think we can go wrong there. I think that's where we truly learn love. And it takes a growth, and none of us are perfect, but it will take time. And I think that is where we can truly find equality and truly find a chance in a way where everyone can be on the same playing field. And I don't want to call it playing field, but on the same level. And it's out of love, not out of fear. Let's love, not fear, guys.
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything you just said, Andres. Yeah, I really hope that this starts a conversation in the community about how we should treat our women. And it is something that we need to talk about as a community, and it'll take time, and everybody knows that, but I hope that one day it'll all just come together. But on that note, thank you guys so much for listening. We really appreciate it. Thank you to Bella for joining us for this podcast. Hope you guys tune into another one. This is Precious Vessel.